am Tina Paul, president of the Suffolk Alumnae chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and I welcome you to the first session of our Black Health series. Today, we will be discussing COVID 19 and trying to encourage everyone to become vaccinated, but make the informed decision to become vaccinated and to provide you information on maintaining your mental health during this pandemic. I would like to introduce to you Dr. Fairchild, who will be our moderator for today. Dr. Fairchild?
Thank you, Mrs. Paul. Greetings. I'm Dr. Charlie Fairchild, and I'm excited to be your moderator for today's events. I have the distinct honor and pleasure of introducing Dr. Ethelyn Mcqueen Gibson, who serves as an associate professor at Hampton University's School of Nursing in Hampton, Virginia, as core leader for the undergraduate minor in gerontology and director for the Center for Gerontology and Minority Aging. Her clinical research focuses on the social, ethical, and behavioral implications of COVID-19 testing among undeserved and/or vulnerable populations. Addressing residents' mistrust from communities of color of public health messaging and review of COVID-19 testing protocols within public housing in Southern Virginia, and how these protocols can be adapted to be more responsive to the needs of residents. She holds a Doctor of Nursing Practice degree from Ursuline College in Cleveland, Ohio, a Master of Science degree in nursing from the Medical College of Georgia in Augusta, Georgia, and a Bachelor of Science degree in nursing from Ursuline College in Cleveland, Ohio. She holds the distinction as a fellow in applied gerontology conferred by the Southern Gerontology Society. She has practiced nursing for over 35 years, to include clinical and administrative positions, and is a veteran, having served as a commissioned officer in the United States Army Corps on active and reserve duty. She serves on the Virginia Governor's COVID-19 Task Force for Long-Term Care and the State COVID-19 Vaccine Advisory Work Group. Dr. Gibson serves as second vice president of the Virginia Board of Nursing and serves in a congressional appointment by the Secretary of Health and Human Services to the Federal Advisory Council to support grandparents raising grandchildren for a term 2018 to 2022. She serves as a board member for the Pennsylvania Agency on Aging, chair of the board of the American Heart Association, and a Doctor of Nursing Practice of Color Incorporated. She is an active member of Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated in Hampton, Virginia, and the Links Incorporated in Newport News, Virginia. She serves on the healthcare ministry for her church, New Hope Baptist in Hampton, Virginia. She is a wife, mother to 2 daughters, and grandmother. Now, without further ado and anticipation, I present to you Dr. Ethelyn Mcqueen Gibson. Dr. Gibson, you have the stage.
Thank you so much. I'd like to first of all say greetings. I am so excited that I thought I would be presenting to you from my home this morning or this afternoon, but actually, as you can see, I am downed in scrubs, and actually right down the hall from me, I started this morning putting COVID vaccines in arms. I thought I would have a few minutes to breathe, but unfortunately, there are now over 150 residents here in the city of Newport News who are lined up to get shots in arms. So I am taking a few moments to share some information with my fellow community members and my sisters here on the screen. And then when I'm done talking to you, giving you some facts and figures, I'm going to go right back down in the gymnasium here at Newport News at the Achievable Dream Elementary School and put some more shots in arms. So let's get right down to some facts and figures. Let's go to the next screen. I'm a teacher at heart. So these are some facts and figures that I'm going to leave with you. And if you have some questions for me after you digest some of this information, I do hope that you will either find out some more information or either make sure that you either text me, email me, or either go to some of the websites that I'm going to leave behind. I'm going to review with you what is the impact of COVID-19 on the African American community. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how important it is to still talk about prevention and COVID testing. Yes, we are in the phase now of doing COVID vaccination, but everybody is not receiving vaccines right now. We also have to talk about what are all the vaccines about. Before you get a vaccine in your arm, you need to make sure that you are informed about the vaccines. And then there are still a lot of people, even this morning, as they sat in my chair, they still had a lot of questions. And if you have a question, don't get a vaccine. You heard it from Dr. Gibson. If you don't have all the answers, don't get the vaccine just yet. You still should wait. And then why aren't our community getting all the vaccines? And then why is messaging important? Next slide. Um, I will leave you also with a link. It's actually called Hip Hop Public Information, and we will have that at the end of my presentation. Next slide. Messaging is so important. I actually teach at Hampton University. My core that I teach to those students is community health and public health. So since last year, when the pandemic began creeping into our community, messaging is so important. And testing is critically important. And testing continues to be important. So way back during the time of Juneteenth, we started talking about COVID testing. And so you see that we started partnering with our food bank. And this was on the campus of Hampton University, right behind the Emancipation Oak. The food bank was there. Centera was there helping us with some testing. The Urban League was there, the NAACP. So it really doesn't matter who your community is, but all of us need to come together as a community and we need to do it together. We don't need to do it in a silo. We all need to wrap our arms around each other and we need to work together as a community. Next slide. Again, it's all about the messaging, community conversations. The way we are going to be most effective for our communities to listen is that they have to see a face that looks like them. And so that means that each and every one of us have to step up. Now, many times you will say, well, that can't be me. Yes, it can be you. Granted, I happen to be a nurse. Granted, I happen to be an associate professor, but I didn't have all the answers, but I started doing my homework. And so when the pandemic hit, I started looking at who were the faces out there giving information in my community. And it bothered me that many of those faces didn't look like my community. So I started bringing my own folding chair to the table. And so I pulled up my own folding chair and I said, I wanted to be at the table. And so that is how I became a part of the vaccine advisory work group that was appointed by the governor. And that vaccine advisory work group then started talking to all of the groups that you see that are listed there on the left-hand side of the screen. That group then became the messengers that was going out into the community. And those messengers are still putting together work groups to listen and hear what's bothering the community. What are we doing right? What are we not doing right? And so that is how I became a part of that group, not because I was asked, because nobody's going to ask you to come to the table. You have to sometimes, like I said, bring your own folding chair to the community. Next slide. Again, it's all about community. If I don't leave you with anything else today, the women of Delta Sigma Theta, I happen to be a part of Alpha Kappa Alpha. You might be a part of your church group. You might be a part of Jack and Jill. You might be a part of your children's group at their school. You might be a part of a women's group, whatever it happens to be. We all have to come together as a community because we will not solve this issue if we don't come together as a community. So again, you see that people were coming out testing as a community. Next slide. Again, you must educate yourself. The COVID tracking project helps us to see at a snapshot how this COVID pandemic has been affecting us as a community. As I have been going out educating our community, I wanted our community to see how we are being impacted, and I wanted them to see that by the numbers. The COVID tracking project helped us to see a snapshot of what the numbers are looking like. And I always tell groups, you never want to be high in the number. And so you see here on the bar graph by a snapshot, Hispanic, Latino, and African Americans are high on the charts. That's all I want you to see in this snapshot. Next slide. Disparities and COVID-19. Again, I want you to see where COVID-19, where the disparities are. The disparities are impacting us in the areas of public trust. They are impacting us because many of us in our Black communities are lacking insurance because we have lost our jobs. It is impacting us economically, again, because many of us, again, have lost our jobs and because we are essential workers. It is impacting us because of the impact of chronic disease. Many of us have diabetes. We have heart disease. We have obesity, all of those. We also are not a part of the state solutions because many of us live in states where we did not buy into Medicaid expansion. So I wanted you to see a snapshot. Next slide. I wanted you to have a snapshot of what are the vaccines that are out there. I know that today I only have a very small snapshot of time with you, but the 4 vaccines that are approved, well, 2 of them, 3 of them are approved right now. Pfizer is one vaccine that is now, that we are now putting shots in arms right now. That's actually the vaccine that I'm giving today. We are also approved to give Moderna. That vaccine is being given. It is a 2-shot series. Johnson & Johnson now also has emergency use approval. That is the only vaccine right now that is a 1-shot vaccine that is being given. And then AstraZeneca also has approval. We are not giving that in the US as of yet. It is being given in Europe, but we are hoping that by the summer that will be the 4th vaccine that is being approved. The slides that I'm going through today will be available to you. I do have some information here that you can see a slide by slide comparison. I wanted to give you some easy to read information about Pfizer and Moderna. Next slide. You also will see people have been asking me information, help me to understand what does mRNA technology mean. And so this will be some information that makes it a little bit easier for you to understand. Next slide. Again, what are the ingredients of the vaccine? What are some of the side effects? So I wanted to leave you some information there. Next slide. What are survival rates and why is it important to get vaccinated? So again, you have some information there. Next slide. What are some issues around COVID vaccine distribution when we talk about um, health disparities? These are some of the concerns. This is why Dr. Gibson is here talking today. This is why we are having some of the smaller vaccine clinics in our communities, like what I'm a part of today. This is why many of our churches are beginning to open their doors. This is why I'm at a school today. This is why our convention centers are opening their doors because we want to make sure that there are not structural barriers that are preventing Black and Brown communities from becoming vaccinated. Next slide. I wanted you to see here again, when we talk about data, I know that for many of our communities, we say the data is not about me, but it is about you. You don't have to have a PhD to understand the data, but you do have to make sure that you pay attention. And so that's why you got all of us out here. So just give me a call and I'll break it down for you, and we'll break it down for you, because again, it's about the community. Next slide. You want to know how things are looking in your state. Because again, when you want to make noise and you want to call your legislators, make sure you know what your state is looking like. So I wanted you to see how is it looking like in the state of Virginia? How is the vaccine rollout looking like? How is it looking like by ages? So if you look at the darker numbers, okay, who's eligible? The states where the rollout is looking better are the ones where it's darker. And if you look at the ones where it's lighter, look at the state of Virginia. We got a long way to catch up. Okay, we got a long way to catch up. Next slide. Again, vaccines, when are they going to be moving to the next phase? Here in Virginia, we are hoping to move to 1C, which would mean that we are hoping that 50 and older, we will be able to move to that phase hopefully by April 15th. But that means that we need to put more shots in arms. So case in point, we got to get more of our seniors vaccinated. So here on the peninsula, we still have about 50,000. Yeah, that's what Dr. Gibson said, 50,000 more seniors that we need to get shots in arms. So that's why this afternoon, I got about 500 more over here in Newport News that we're trying to do. So if you know of seniors who need to get shots in arms, if you hear of some place that needs to get them vaccinated, that means that you might need to put them in your car. You might need to help get them there so that they can get shots in their arms. Next slide. Go back one slide. This number here on the right-hand side, it doesn't matter what age you are. Please make sure that you get yourself registered either by that number, the 877 number, or either the website that is listed there. It doesn't matter your age. If you are 18 and older, make sure that you are registered in the site so when your time does come up, your name and your number will be called. Next slide. This just shows you racial disparities. Next slide. I wanted you to see what are some of the concerns, especially of Black women, over possible side effects with COVID-19 vaccines. Next slide. Again, vaccine distributions, it's not just about getting the vaccines in the arm, it's about structural and institutional racism. I wanted you to be left with this information about the algorithm, about structural racism. It goes way back to the 1800s, and I left you with some information for yourself to review. Hampton University is trying to be a part of that solution. We have now been designated as a COVID-19 vaccination site by the state. We now have our own license, and we will, within the next 30 days, begin to travel to some of the rural areas and also some of the neighborhood areas where people are not able to travel because transportation is a barrier to deliver vaccines in those communities. Next slide. I am also a part of a National Institutes of Health grant along with Norfolk State and Eastern Virginia Medical Center. We were awarded a $1.8 million grant, and we are meeting on a weekly basis with residents from low-income housing to assess what are their thoughts surrounding COVID-19 messaging. And we are taking that information back to the legislation to let them know what their thoughts are. And so these are some of the residents that I meet with on a weekly basis. And we will be publishing that information and in real time taking that back to let people know how we need to change that messaging. Next slide. These are students from Hampton University who I think it's so important. We must prepare future healthcare providers that look like the people who we want to serve, because again, cultural competency is so important. And so we must make sure that we are preparing those healthcare providers to be in our system, because again, we have to have them at the bedside to make sure that people get what they need. Next slide. We all must be vaccinated. And again, it's all about the messenger. Next slide. Again, look for opportunities to be educated about COVID-19. And so I'm very excited that the women here of Delta Sigma Theta asked me to be a speaker here, because webinars like this are so important. And please keep your eyes open for any type of opportunities to continue to be educated throughout this pandemic. Next slide. I want to leave you with some very important tools that are out there. If you have an opportunity, read the book Medical Apartheid. It is a very important tool to help you understand that this pandemic has only opened up the crack. This has been happening for centuries, and the pandemic is only letting us know that this is only the beginning. We must turn this tide because this must stop, but the pandemic is reminding us that it must change. Next slide. And oh, I think I have one more slide. I think that might be it. Is that my last slide? Okay, there we go. And with that, okay, and with that, I want to thank you so much for offering me this opportunity just to give you a few pearls of wisdom that I hope you will educate yourself about COVID-19, become informed, keep yourself updated. Testing is important. Vaccines are important. But again, it's all about the community. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gibson. First and foremost, I want to just say, I'm sure for all of our viewers that we appreciate you. Thank you for saving lives. Thank you for being on the front lines. And with that said, I am sure there are a lot of questions for you. So at this time, I'd like to introduce one of our very own, Mrs. Shay Skinner, who is the chair of the Physical and Mental Health Committee, to lead us in a question and answer session. So to all our viewers out there, please feel free at this time to post questions. Mrs. Skinner, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, all. We are going to go ahead and start with our question and answer section. I know Dr. Gibson is busy right now, so if we do not get to your question or there may not be any questions at this time, I will make sure that I provide the information to her so she can answer those at a later date. You can reach us at Suffolk dst.org to provide your questions. I'll make sure Dr. Gibson receives those questions. I will be receiving the questions on Facebook Live, and we will give it about a couple more seconds. If there are none, we will move on to our next presenter, Ms. Barbie. But let's see. So I do not see any questions, but please, if you think of any questions later, please feel free to reach out to us and we will make sure we get all questions, concerns, anything to Dr. Gibson. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I hope you all are enjoying this. And I just want to say also to Dr. Gibson that I am going to bring my folding chair to the table. Okay. And I think that's something that all of our viewers will get. So now I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. And if you thought that was awesome, we have more. So let's get ready for the one, the only Mrs. Tracy Barbie. Mrs. Barbie is a native of Youngstown, Ohio, and currently resides in Chesapeake, Virginia. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist at Fountain of Hope Counseling Center and the co-founder of the Marriage Builders. Tracy has over 10 years of experience in social services delivery, working as a case manager, CPS supervisor, and counselor in a variety of agencies and capacities with diverse groups of people throughout the metropolitan Atlanta and Hampton Roads area. She has over 20 years of counseling experience in the mental health and marriage and family field. She is the founder of Fountain of Hope Counseling Center, LLC, a private practice located in Hampton and Chesapeake that offers counseling to individuals, couples, families, and groups who may deal with anxiety, depression, addictions, women and men issues, mood disorders, and much more. She is the co-founder of the Marriage Builders, a counseling service where she and her husband offer a variety of services designed to assist couples with laying the foundation for a prosperous relationship or with replacing a crumbling foundation with a strong new groundwork. Tracy holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in English, pre-law from Central State University, a Master of Arts degree in Biblical Counseling from Luther Rice University, and a Master of Science degree in Marriage and Family Therapy from Capella University. She also has additional graduate studies in English from the University of Akron. She is a member of the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy and a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Tracy is a committed Christian and servant of the Lord. She has served in numerous ministry leadership capacities over the years, including Director of Family Life Ministries, Director of Discipleship, Marriage Mentor Director, Lay Counselor, and Prayer Ministry Leader. Tracy's greatest desire is to serve the people of God and see them realize their potential in Him. She has been happily married to Derek B. Barbie for 28 years, and they have 2 children together, Derek II and Serenity. So, our faithful followers, without further ado and anticipation, I present to you Mrs. Tracy Barbie. You have the stage, Mrs. Barbie.
Hello. Hello, thank you, Dr. Fairchild, for introducing me. I'm excited to be here And it's just a privilege and an honor that the Delta Sigma Theta sorority would ask me to come and speak on mental health as it relates to COVID. And so my first slide says, be the best you. And when I think about that, I think about, most people think counseling the mind, but the best you is not just the mind, it's the body and the soul. And I didn't realize that until I really got further into counseling, that is the whole person we have to look at in the counseling field. And so being the best you is not just your mind, but it is your body and your soul. Next slide. Mental health versus mental illness. Now, a lot of people would say things like, oh, she's crazy, or, I think she's bipolar, or things like that. That is when we are actually talking about a mental illness. But what I'm here to talk about today is mental wellness. And mental wellness is just being mentally well and fit. And especially during this time of COVID and this pandemic, we want to make sure people are mentally well. Next slide. And so what does that look like? If you notice the slide has this girl looking at all of this different stuff, from FaceTime to Pinterest to a lover to working, laptops, cars, money, questions. Her mind is just going, 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 going. But on the other side, what do you see? She's just there. There's nothing really going on. And in today's society, with what's all going on, we tend to look like what's going on the one side of her brain. Our goal is to really be mindful and just be at peace. And you're just like, how can we do that? How can we just look at just being peaceful and nothing's there? Well, we can do it, and there's a way to do it. And that is just being still and being mindful. Next slide. But when we're not, a lot of things happen. If you would go ahead and just play that video for me. And while she's queuing up the video, I just want to say that in everyday life, there's a lot of things that go on in our heads. And when those things go on in our heads, what happens? Depression can happen. What does that look like? Depression can look like forgetting things. It can look like just being irritable and angry and things like that. That's what it can look like. It can look like just not wanting to be present, shutting down and shutting out, a lot of stuff on your mind, like the one picture with the girl. All of that stuff can cause depression. If the video's ready, we can go ahead and play that. And I don't know if you guys are getting any sound on that end, but what this is a picture of Dr. Strange. And
how many did you see?
Excuse me? But does your friend often do that?
Strange, we all right? Be back here.
Hey, what was that?
Look forward in time to view alternate futures, to see all the possible outcomes of the coming conflict. How many did you see? 14,605,000. How many, Llewyn? One.
So even in looking at that video, we are not Doctor Strange, but if you could see, Doctor Strange went and he was looking at things in the future to happen. And what happens is we sometimes do that. We get all of this stuff going through our minds and trying to find out all the outcomes of whatever situation is going on. And then that also causes issues with depression and or anxiety. Next slide. And so, with that being said, some of the things that happens when we have a lot going on and we're not present is depression, muscle tension. We also have anxiety, like what you would have seen if that was me doing what Doctor Strange was doing. We don't realize it, but we look just that crazy like Doctor Strange when we have all of those things going on in our minds. And sometimes we even sound it. But it can also cause insomnia, not sleeping. And even when we're going out during this COVID, things like that can also continue to happen. Will I get it? Can I touch? Do I have to wear my mask? All of these issues. And so we just have to sometimes just pull back and relax and just be mindful. If we can go to the next slide, please. And the next slide after that. And when we're not mindful, what ends up happening? We start looking and doing some negative coping skills. We have them. If you ever remember the movie, it was called Taken. And he said, I have some particular skills. His daughter was going to be taken. And he said, I know what's going to happen to you. And he ran off what was going to happen to her. And so, what happens in counseling when we see people who come in and they're worried and nervous or not sleeping, they have a particular lack of skills, which we would call them negative coping skills, which could be eating too much or too little, negative thinking, drinking too much alcohol or smoking marijuana just to relax them, or smoking cigarettes, any of those things. And we can also see anger, irritability, violence, violent behavior. And so when we're looking at just being mindful and just not allowing the cares of life to get to us, you say, Tracy, is that possible? Yes, it is. It is possible. We just have to be mindful of what's actually happening in our lives. Next slide, please. And so you say, well, you know what? In my family, some of this just runs in the family. It's genetics. You might be pre-exposed to anxiety. Doesn't mean you have it. Like when you go to the doctor, you can be pre-exposed to high blood pressure and don't have it because it runs in the family. That's what the genetics mean. We get physicals and they'll ask us all kind of questions, but we never really look at the mental health side, because genetics plays a big part in our mental health side too. And so in order to keep things at bay, what do? You look at the mental wellness of your life and make sure you're capturing all of that. It could be environmental. Just think when you go out, the fog, or uh, when you buy cars and things like that, that can play a part in our lives as well. But those are things that science say will play a big part in how we are mentally. But Tracy Barbie has her own thinking as well. And when I come into this field, one of the biggest things that I see is the root problem of a lot of not sleeping or anxiety or depression or muscle tension is unforgiveness. Unforgiveness is the root of a lot of issues because we carry those things. Next slide. And when we do, what happens? We can be angry, sad, mad, anxious, powerless, weak. We can feel all of those things and guilt when we should be feeling love, joy, and peace. And so those things rest in our heart, the unforgiving heart, which can cause a lot of tension in our bodies, or anxiousness, when we really should be walking in love, joy, and peace. And for that to happen, we have to learn to forgive. Next slide. And so just being mindful, and there's a lot of practical ways that you can look up how to be mindful. You can YouTube it, Google it. There's a lot of different exercises that you could do, but I would say, being a counselor, get into a therapist. They can show you how. And it doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. When you go and get your annual physical, doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. It just means it's time for my checkup. But who thinks about getting a mental health checkup? That is so key because the mind, body, and the soul all is a part of who we are. Next slide. And so the 6 best doctors for improving well-being. 1, exercise. The sun, did you know getting out into the sun and getting that vitamin D, it can help decrease depression, symptoms of depression, let me say. It can help decrease that. Water, getting plenty of rest. People say, I could sleep off for 3 or 4 hours. No, really, your body really needs to rejuvenate itself. The air, getting some fresh air. You ever been in a house and yes, you got the air conditioning going, but if you go outside, you just take in that breath of air. You just like, yeah. And eating the right things. Food is a great way, it's a great doctor to improve your mental health. Next slide. And so some facts. Studies have shown that low vitamin D has been linked to depression and fatigue. Stated that earlier. The right food is fuel. I was talking to someone the other day and they said, I eat in order to satisfy myself. And I said, oh, really? So you don't eat for the fuel, because that's what food should be for. It should be fueling us. And if it's not, then we have to look at what we're eating. Exercise helps increase weight loss and energy. Exercise can also reduce chronic diseases. Drinking water will significantly impact your energy levels and brain functioning. Drinking water can aid to weight loss. Getting fresh air clears your lungs and help with mental focus. Getting the proper amount of sleep or rest allows your body to repair. And so I wasn't there, you guys, so I'm not like this expert on this, but what I can say is when I got to the point of where I had to look at the entire body of Tracy Barbie, the mind, soul, and body, I began this journey and this quest to say, it's not just about my mind. I have to have the right mindset in order to do what I want to do. However, you start wherever you can. Next slide. And so be the best you, because your life, you just have one life to live and it is yours. Own it, claim it, live it, do the best, be the best you can be with it. Hillary Clinton said that, and I'm saying it today. It's your life and live it until you die. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tracy Barbie. We appreciate all that information you provided on being the best us and trying to implement healthy techniques to deal with stress and moving forward. Our speakers, Ms. Barbie and Dr. Gibson, thank you so much for your time today and education on these topics and being a strong, reliable resource for our viewers. You both are doing great things in our community. Ms. Barbie has been servicing the community for over 20 years and has touched so many. And Dr. Gibson, at this time, is tirelessly working to make sure vaccines are received along with education in the Hampton Roads area. Thanks again on behalf of Suffolk Alumnae Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Next slide. I would like to mention our up and coming April 10th event, Session 2, titled Black Health Series Teen Summit for ages 11 through 18, where topics our youth face daily will be addressed, like STDs and general mental health. Parents, please feel free to join us also. We look forward to another exciting educational event. One last time, thank you all once again for joining us. And please feel free to follow us on all social media platforms. Thank you and have a great day and weekend.